Welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio. Big nonprofit ideas for the other 95%. I'm your aptly named host of your favorite hebdomadal podcast. Oh, I'm glad you're with me. I'd be hit with hypernatremia if you shared the salty idea that you missed this week's show. Movement messaging. Expanding on the partnership theme 2 weeks ago, consider building a movement with orgs outside your direct mission. You'll want cohesive, effective messaging, and that's where Hannah Thomas and Morgan Fletcher can help. Hannah is with Big Duck, and Morgan is at Girls for Gender Equity. This is part of our 21 NTC coverage. And farewell, Maria Semple. Her first nonprofit radio was February 11, 2011. Soon after, she became our prospect research contributor. Maria's practice has evolved, and this is her last show. Quoting somebody nobody can identify, "Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened." On Tony's Take 2, podcast pleasantries. We're sponsored by Turn 2 Communications, PR and content for nonprofits. Your story is their mission. Turn-2.co. And by Send In Blue, the only all-in-one digital marketing platform empowering nonprofits to grow. Tony.ma/sendinblue. Let's get started, shall we? Here is movement messaging. Welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of 21 NTC, the 2021 Nonprofit Technology Conference. We're sponsored at 21 NTC by Turn 2 Communications. Turn-2.co. My guests now are Hannah Thomas, Senior Strategist at Big Duck, and Morgan Fletcher, Director of Marketing and Storytelling at Girls for Gender Equity. Hannah, Morgan, welcome.
Hey, Tony. Excited to be here.
Hi, Tony. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. It's a pleasure to have you on Nonprofit Radio and our coverage of the 21 NTC. Your session topic is me versus we. Well, we versus me. We versus me. Maybe it makes a difference. We'll find out if it makes a difference. But I'll get it correct. We versus me, building messaging for a movement. Hannah, would you get us started with some basics? What is this movement messaging that we are talking about?
Yeah, I'd love to start us off with that. So to set some context in the nonprofit landscape, over the last few years, there's been a lot of efforts made by nonprofits to band together in coalition, to work in partnership, in service of movements that exist beyond even just the organization's mission. So those are causes that are benefiting the collective sector, benefiting the larger world, and they really require a different take on messaging. A lot of times nonprofits are very focused on clearly articulating themselves and their mission and making sure their audiences are really motivated to support them. But movement messaging, in order to be effective, has to be used by multiple voices, multiple entities, and move a bunch of different audiences to take action in support of a larger cause. So when we're talking about movement messaging, we're talking about sort of a reframing from me to we. So that sort of explains the title there.
Okay. So we versus me is okay, or me versus we is okay. But you want to go from me to we.
Exactly.
Not we to me. That's the opposite of what we're trying to do. All right. That would be taking a great cause and distilling it down to we're the center of the universe and we're the only ones who can do this work. So the rest of you are out. No,
that's exactly the opposite of
that's
what
exactly what we're not doing. Right. That's antithetical to what we're talking about. Okay. All right. Morgan, let's bring you in. Let's help us understand what the value is of working outside our mission. Because I'm thinking of our listeners, they're tied up in their work, and I want them to help, or I want to help you to help them see the benefit of seeing outside your own individual mission to a broader cause. So what was the experience at Girls for Gender Equity?
Yeah, for sure. So at Girls for Gender Equity, and we call ourselves GGE for short, just as context for who we are, we're an intergenerational organization based in Brooklyn that's centering Black cisgender and transgender girls and gender nonconforming, non-binary youth of color in the fight for gender and racial justice. So with a mission statement like that, obviously actually is quite broad, which allows us a lot of opportunity to partner and collaborate with organizations who are able to meet us at the intersections of the lived experiences of the young people that we're working with. So for example, environmental justice, economic justice, all these other issues are also racial justice issues. And so we have a lot of entry points to our work, particularly for this session with Hannah. I was speaking about a national agenda for Black girls, which is GGE's first national campaign that we launched in alignment with the presidential election, keeping in mind that we were always trying to center young people of diverse backgrounds, but of color, to help us shift policy priorities and have them actually be informed by people who need the change in their lives. So there were plenty of organizations that we partnered with in this work. We had about 60 endorsing organizations, and the campaign itself is spearheaded by a steering committee of 80 young people from across the country, and they each represent their own organizations that are local. So we're able to work collaboratively with these organizations that may fall under the umbrella of what we're talking about, right? These intersectional areas of young people's experiences, but they may not be, exactly cookie cutter like Girls for Gender Equity, but the issues that we're talking about are in alignment with theirs. And so we're able to develop strong messaging that all of the organizations collaborating with us can uplift and use and take action on.
Okay. Was there any consternation at GGE about working in broader coalitions and excuse me, maybe, diluting some of our own work? Was there any pushback, like in the organization, maybe among the board? Just, I'm trying to help people see what obstacles might be out there for them to do this work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did you have any of that?
We were very fortunate. I will say that we had a really good base of organizations that we were used to collaborating with in this way, who were aligned with our values already. Newer organizations, of course, came in and did a gut check with us, and we had internal conversations, and we hold regular meetings for those folks as well, so we can kind of like catch them up on where our messaging is coming from to continue to check that we are still in alignment and with our priorities and framing. But I would say that actually the place where we experienced the most challenge and growth as an organization and as a campaign running team was in the messaging around identity. You heard me list a couple of different gender presentations and identity that one might claim and moving through this world. And for us, and especially as we're co-collaborating, co-designing this campaign with the young people in the steering committee, we had a lot of conversations around like, well, honestly, who's a Black girl? Why are we framing it this way? Do we, how expansive is this terminology, and does it accurately represent, do people who are on this campaign feel accurately represented by this language? So I would say that but most of the pushback that we, were receiving was extremely useful because it was coming from young people themselves who were saying, I'm non-binary. I don't love that this is framed this way. And I'm like, as the person who's in charge of the framing, I'm like, great, keep giving me that feedback, right? Let's create a campaign that actually represents you and how you're moving through this world. That's the point. So I would say we're constantly having that dialogue so we can continue to make sure that the campaign is serving the people it's intending to serve.
I have to broaden my mind, because when if I were getting that kind of feedback that you got, I'd be like, this is so annoying. Why can't you just agree with what the rest of us agreed on? Why can't you just jump on board? Why do you have to cause trouble? All right. So
it makes it a really time-consuming process.
It's frustrating, but frustration usually leads to a better place. I mean, if it's channeled right,
yes.
if it's unproductive, then it's destructive. But in creativity, I've found that frustration usually leads to a better outcome. All right.
Yeah.
Hannah, let's go back to you now. So take it a little broader, Hannah. Help us identify like what how does Big Duck think of a movement? What's a movement?
Yeah, I think actually really related to what you were just talking about, the language, the definitions, all of this stuff is, always evolving, and we're always adapting what we think about as a movement and the role that messaging can play in that. But generally at Big Duck, we're thinking about a movement as the commitment of many to work together and create transformative change based on a shared purpose or goal. And we see movements.
Many, I'm distilling that down to many working on a shared purpose or goal.
That's right. Towards transformative change.
Okay. And how about the messaging? How do you conceive of the messaging? And then we're gonna have to dive in and explain how we all work together to ally around a common message. But help us understand. I mean, are we just talking about it's just the simple communications, what each of us produce?
Yeah, we are talking about, all of the different ways that you can communicate something to an audience and try and prompt them or motivate them to take action with you. And so that can be, in a tweet. That can be all different sorts of ways that you can communicate out. That can be in the stories that you tell, the narratives that you're trying to disrupt or push forward. There's a lot of different ways that that can be at a rally when somebody's giving a speech, what's being said there in that context. So we're really thinking big about what messaging can look like and trying not to have a narrow or prescriptive view.
Okay. So yeah, whatever channels you have. And then does each, before we get to approval, like getting messaging approved or so, I don't know we'll talk about that process if it's even necessary, but how do you start to bring folks together around a common message with inclusivity? Hannah, you just convene a meeting and then you start, somebody produce a document and then everybody comments on it? How does this process work?
Yeah, I would say that there's probably a lot of different processes that work, but we found that helpful, to align yourself with other organizations, other people, individuals who would be aligned around a common cause, is to start the conversation around shared values. And the Opportunity Agenda is obviously a great resource, doing a lot of work around storytelling, using values and all of that, but shared values are really an effective for folks who wouldn't otherwise get the nitty gritty of what you're trying to achieve, to understand their role in your cause and understand how it relates to their own. So we talked about in our session all of the different ways that you can sort of frame this cause in ways that use those deep shared values and also, fill in the context around that. So, we all believe in love. Or we all believe in opportunity. So maybe that's an effective for somebody, an organization who back in the day was advocating for a gay marriage, right? There was that was a great example at the time, actually, of the way that shared values were a really efficient, effective way for to move hearts and minds, and to gather some momentum around this cause that on the surface, on the policy level, folks weren't really gelling with.
That's a great example. Yeah. Love. Who's going to disagree with that?
Exactly.
Right.
Literally no one.
I'm the anti-love candidate.
Tough case to make.
Not in favor of that. Yeah. That's my platform is hate. Right. Well, there are people who have that, but they don't call it that. Mm-hmm. Even they would say that I agree with love. We agree with love. All right. So cool. All right. And then starting to frame these messages, like you said, I'm kind of in the details. So then, all right. So we have these shared values. Morgan, how do we start to build messaging? Do we just a bunch of shared documents that people start contributing to, or how did that work?
Yes, the process. Well, for us, honestly, it really is that fundamental, basic, just kind of look, let's just start putting some things down. Of course, there's all sorts of jazzy processes you could design and do all sorts of discovery conversations. And, you can call it by those names, and that is what it is. But I think ultimately, we really did just sit down as a team, internal, and lay out our vision as it aligned with, of course, the larger goals of the organization, right? Because this was specific to a campaign, but this applies to all of our work. We sit down as a team. We pull out a document, and this was developed in the time where we could be in person at our office. So we were able to sit down together at a whiteboard, technically, and put everything down. And then we started to introduce that to people that we thought would be great allies in the work. And so we had our entry points at each organization based on people we knew through our connections personally, and also just kind of put out a general call to action into these organizing spaces that we knew had similar values alignment and similar ideas about a progressive future for Black girls. So we could run with that. So it really was a lot of Google documents, honestly.
All right. So Morgan, did you have a formal organization that you all created, or this just like this, you didn't make a legal organization out of all these entities, right? You just all contributed to a campaign.
Correct. So we remained Girls for Gender Equity, and we launched a national agenda as an initiative of Girls for Gender Equity. Within that, we do have a steering committee, as I mentioned, that's young people. And then we also have the partner organizations who are represented by those young people, and some who are not, but who are partners in the work at large. And so those groups all have names, but we did not go about formalizing legally a new entity.
Okay. Not necessary. All right. And so while this is going on, while this larger campaign is going on, you're still doing your own messaging, right? At GGE, that's not like that's suspended or anything.
Nope. Definitely juggling both.
Right. All right.
It is.
And how is fundraising impacted? Was part of the campaign for fundraising for the entities, or it was a different call to action?
Yeah, fundraising is certainly a call to action for a national agenda specifically, because it has its own funding. And so, we're fundraising for GGE, we're fundraising for a national agenda. And of course, when you're talking about GGE, I mean, we do narrative shift work, we do direct service work, we also do organizing, policy campaigns work. So there are like several different buckets of work that we're fundraising for at any time. I think what our process has been to keeping that streamlined for and under, comprehensive and clear for our audiences is just naming, but in very clear, consistent terms, all of what we're holding as best we can, and acknowledging that it's a lot. And that allows us to lean into what Hannah and I were talking about before around intersectionality and the holisticness of the work and the holisticness of the movement work, right? So we can say, we've been very explicit about, a national agenda is focusing on these national priorities. However, at a city and state level in New York, where we're based, this is what else we're holding and how it is interlaced with these other priorities. And so we're able to flesh out where all these things are meeting, and also naming, you can choose to support any of these, but ultimately supporting us will support all of them.
Okay. Hannah, help us understand some more around the complexities of messaging and consistent messaging, or maybe you have some best practices at Big Duck or something. Help us flesh out the details of getting consistent messaging across all the entities contributing to, well, in Morgan's case, it was the national agenda, but whatever cause we might be working toward.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because at Big Duck, primarily, we are preaching you need to have one voice, a very consistent voice, a very aligned voice. Everybody should be a brand ambassador who understands deeply what your positioning is, what your personality is, should be able to speak, all, sounding the same. With movements, I think it's actually very different. I think you have to necessarily make space for people to communicate the messages in their own way, using their own personalities. The movement it's really, in my view, like an exercise in relinquishing control in a lot of ways, and making sure that it's something that others can own as well and feel like is theirs to speak about in their own voice.
It's interesting, like nobody owns it, but everybody owns it, but nobody owns it.
Exactly. And that's why you can see a lot of successful movements. One that I think is really cool is the Land Back movement and campaign. So their website is very simple, and it has a manifesto with about 10 lines of text on it about all the different meanings that land back has in terms of a literal, meaning of we want to get this land back, but also the narrative this means about our relationship to the environment, our relationship to racial justice, all of these different things. So it sort of sets up a basic something to work with. But if you look at the hashtag land back on Instagram or something like that, there are so many folks, so many individuals who are able to build meaning from that manifesto and take it in new directions and give it new life, all sort of aligned generally around that manifesto, but really expanding the meaning.
Anything either of you want to say about this sort of this consistent shared messaging before we move on? Morgan, you're shaking your head. You want to add some more?
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore, I think, how important it is for there to be a muscle for constant vulnerability, openness to feedback, and collaboration. Campaigns, as Hannah was saying, folks are able to step into the campaign work, individuals and organizations, and make it their own in a way. And that is so special and unique. And you also want to be sure that does not spiral into another direction, of course. And so you want to also provide structure and infrastructure for folks to feel supported as they're moving with this campaign, right?
Like what? Like what kind of structure and infrastructure?
Yeah, so I would say, developing really basic tools that people can use, like messaging kits, digital toolkits to provide folks with key talking points, graphics if you want there to be visual cohesion to your campaign. And folks won't always use that stuff. Of course, they're like, it doesn't match. Individuals might be like, it doesn't match my aesthetic. Organizations might be like, we want to frame it a little differently so the intersection with our work is more cohesive and clear to our audiences. But you want to give folks a starting point so they can say, I like looking at Land Back's manifesto, they can refer to some tools and documents and say, okay, I know where this is rooted, and I'm going to pull these pieces from it for my specific messaging or my organization's specific messaging. And then having consistent check-ins with folks, updating that regularly, letting folks know it's being updated, these real basic communications that get lost because you're holding so much.
Do you feel like Giving Tuesday is an example of what we're talking about, or like spun writ large, billions of dollars now? Or is that really something different because it's so decentralized? I mean, we're talking about something decentralized here. Like I said, everybody owns it, but nobody owns it. But I don't know. Do you feel like Giving Tuesday is could be an example writ large of what we're talking about, or no, that's really something different?
I think so.
It's okay to disagree with me and say it's something different.
No, I was thinking about it. I think, we're talking specifically about very progressive movements. I certainly am, but I'm thinking about how they really provide, we obviously participate in Giving Tuesday, and they always provide such incredible material. So you feel so clear through the process. Okay, I'm 4 months, 6 months out. How do I build this campaign around this moment, right? And I always feel so prepared for Giving Tuesday because they're able to roll out such robust materials to build that infrastructure for us as organizations.
All right. Well, there's at least lessons to take from Giving Tuesday in terms of the support. You mentioned support infrastructure. One of the things that you mentioned in your session description, Hannah, is that you want folks to reconsider some best practices that may be hindering their cause. What does that mean? Like
yeah.
what?
We hit on some of it earlier when we were talking about intersectionality and making space for, other causes or things that are not directly in your lane, but maybe in the next lane over. I wanted to say this Audre Lorde quote of, "There's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives." So if you are an environmental organization, but you don't see how that could connect to racial justice or to voting rights or to whatever else may be out there, you're missing some great opportunities to expose, that there's critical connections between all that we're doing. And it can be really hard. That's the me versus we in action is like, I need these dollars, I need these donors, I need the spotlight, all of that, versus a different mindset, which we think of as the scarcity versus abundance mindset. What I was just explaining is an example of some scarcity thinking versus we want to spotlight this whole ecosystem of change we've got going on, of which we are a piece. There's room to show how we're connected to what our peers are doing. there's enough dollars and donors to go around. It doesn't have to be us who gets all 50 of this donor's dollars. Maybe they give us 5 and they give everybody else 5 too. And again, a de-emphasis maybe on dollars, right? Folks have currency that goes outside of, money. And how are you showing value for that? So a lot of ways of like kind of decentering your organization in a healthy and productive way. So that's one example of disrupting sort of best practices that we think about.
All right. And that's related to what you had said earlier about surrendering control, the point that nobody owns this. Right.
Exactly. Right.
You have another one? That's very good. Decentering. Right. What else? Another sort of mind shift that you want to encourage?
Yeah, we had a whole section where we were talking about disrupting dominant narratives, which I think Morgan can speak to a little bit more. But dominant narratives are these sort of pervasive, like the way we say things or the way we tell things and the things that we assume that we are all really sharing. And movements are a great opportunity to really disrupt that and form new narratives that are healthier and that are more progressive and are going to frankly help us transform the world in the way we want to. I don't know, Morgan, if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I would just add as like a specific example, for us, when GGE is talking about the constituents in our programs and young people who are in our campaigns, a lot of the work that we do is around shifting the narrative around and your audience cannot see this or cannot hear this or see it, but I'm using air quotes when I talk about the, monolithic Black girl, right? Like this, and no community is monolithic. This means nothing, right? So for us to break down that absurd premise, it requires us to really give opportunity to young people in our programs to tell their unique story as they want to tell it. And so for us, our narrative shifting work looks like passing the mic. It's not about me, the director of marketing and storytelling, going to a rally and giving a really great speech. It's about young people going to that rally and them giving great speeches, or speaking in front of city council in New York, which we do quite frequently, or talking to legislators across the country. Other types of campaigns that we're building out right now, video and social media storytelling campaigns that really allow us to present a breadth of experiences. And all those people are saying, I fall somewhere on this Black girlhood spectrum, this identity spectrum, and my story may not look like this young person or that person or that person, but it is still important. It is still affected by the legislation that's happening in this country, and therefore it's still relevant.
Okay. I have a little work going on in the background. I don't know if you can hear that buzz. So yes, you can. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Let's leave it there. But Hannah, why don't you just take us out with some last minute motivation? I can see ego has to be, checked at the door. We've been talking about decentralization, decentering yourself and your organization. So yeah, Hannah, leave us with some last minute motivation.
I have the perfect way to close this out. And this is
Awesome.
What we closed our presentation with, was how important the role of a radical imagination is in helping develop movement messaging and helping you create that story that you want to tell and move folks towards action. I think it has taken, I'm paraphrasing Adrienne Maree Brown, who wrote in Emergent Strategy, how it took somebody else's imagination for this world that we have right now to come to fruition, right? For all of these structures and all of everything going on to happen. And we need to use our imagination if we want to create something different. And I think that if nowhere else, that really radical imagination, that proud, proclamation of a future that we're going to get to, really belongs in movement messaging. So it's more of an abstract ending note, but really important to use your imagination and be sharing your vision for the future unapologetically.
That's Hannah Thomas, Senior Strategist at Big Duck. Also was Morgan Fletcher, Director of Marketing and Storytelling at GGE, Girls for Gender Equity. Hannah, Morgan, thank you both very much. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Glad to have you. And thank you for being with Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of 21 NTC, where we're sponsored by Turn 2 Communications, turn-2.co. It's time for a break. Turn 2 Communications. You remember them. The Chronicle of Philanthropy, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Stanford Social Innovation Review, the Washington Post, The Hill, Cranes, Nonprofit Quarterly, Forbes, MarketWatch. That's where Turn 2 clients have gotten exposure. You want that kind of press? Turn-2.co. Your story is their mission. It's time for Tony's Take 2. The pleasantries, the podcast pleasantries have to come out. They haven't been for some time. They've been dormant. They've been on hiatus for several weeks, but they're back. Pleasantries to our podcast audience. You 13,000 plus listeners throughout the world. We've got listeners in Germany. Where else besides North America? Certainly North America. We've got Canada and Mexico covered. So those go without saying. Not that we take the northern and southern neighbor listeners for granted. No. But they're there. It's just kind of understood. You know, it's Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio. You just know that all the North American countries are going to be represented. It's subsumed in the name. That's what it is. That's what I mean to say. It's subsumed. So we got North America covered. That's subsumed. Going abroad. Germany, often, checking in, Italy, France, UK, certainly. UK. Those are the ones that come to mind. And if you're out there in other countries beyond those just named, let me know. I'd love to shout you out. Love to. The pleasantries, I'm grateful. I am grateful that you listen to Nonprofit Radio week after week. I'm glad the show brings you value. I hope it gives you actionable steps or things you can start thinking about to lead to action. That's what this is about, right? So the pleasantries to you, our many, many podcast listeners, I'm grateful. That is Tony's Take 2. Send in Blue. It's an all-in-one digital marketing platform with tools to build end-to-end digital campaigns that look professional, are affordable, and keep you organized. They do digital campaign marketing. That's what we're talking about. Most marketing software is designed for big companies and has enterprise-level price tags. No, not here. Send in Blue is priced for nonprofits. It's an easy-to-use marketing platform. They walk you through the steps of building a campaign. You want to try them out and get a free month? Send in Blue. You hit the listener landing page at tony.ma/sendinblue. We've got buku, buttloads more time for Nonprofit Radio. Here is Farewell, Maria Semple. It always has been my pleasure to welcome Maria Semple to the show, of course, month after month, year after year, many years. Today, it's bittersweet to welcome Maria Semple back to Nonprofit Radio for a farewell. You know her. She is the Prospect Finder, a trainer and speaker on prospect research. Her latest book is Magnify Your Business: Tips, Tools, and Strategies for Growing Your Business or Your Nonprofit. She's our doyen of Dirt Cheap and Free. She has been for many years. She's at theprospectfinder.com and at Maria Semple. I always used to say, Maria, it's a pleasure to welcome you back. It's a little, like I said, bittersweet this time, though. Hello. Hello and well. You're still welcome. You're still very welcome. It's just not so much of a pleasure. That's all.
Well, thank you for having me back for a little bit of a farewell. And you're right, Tony, it is bittersweet. You and I have been talking in one way or another and having it recorded. Before the time of internet radio, we were doing some tele-recordings, right? We would do recorded calls. And
that's right. We had those phone calls.
Too,
yes.
Right?
We did a few telecalls together about planned giving and prospect research. Yes.
Yeah. Back in the day when it was teleclasses, right?
Calls, right. Yeah. Yes. And then we did some conferences together.
That's right.
Prospect research and planned giving. And then it's been many years on nonprofit radio. It's been like 8 years or so you've been with the show.
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
our prospect research contributor.
And it's
So
been so.
what's going on? What's going on in your professional life?
Well, my business, in the last couple of years has expanded and focused a little bit more, like the title of my book, Magnify Your Business, it's really kind of focused a little more on online marketing, strategy, social media, email marketing, LinkedIn, and really, expanding to beyond nonprofits as well. So I work with a lot of small businesses and financial advisors. And I've been, pulled back a little bit. I've been, having moved to beautiful Crystal Coast of North Carolina. I've been working more part-time than full-time as I was back in New Jersey. And I'm doing a ton of volunteering for a number of different organizations and capacities. And one of the most recent projects that I'm really excited about is expanding broadband. And, that's a big topic right now, coincidentally. So last year I was invited to serve on a committee here in Carteret County to expand broadband opportunity in underserved and not served at all regions. Believe it or not, there are pockets down east and so forth that just don't have any internet. And so we saw in the last year how important it was to be able to stay connected. And so through the Carteret County Economic Development Foundation, I continue to serve on a committee that's going to now be implementing some of the deficiencies and areas that were identified in the digital inclusion report that came out. So that's one of the big projects.
So you're working more part-time, and that means you're not going to be contributing prospect research wisdom as our doyen of Dirt Cheap and Free on nonprofit radio. So your focus has shifted a little more business oriented, only part-time, a lot of volunteer work, which I love because we only live 12 miles apart so
right.
you're helping my community too.
Absolutely.
We're in the same county. All right. I understand. Not so happy to hear it, but I understand.
Yeah. And I'm serving as my HOA board president.
I hate HOAs. Oh my God.
So
When I moved here, homeowners associations. Yeah. So you're those people who say you can't put this color on your door and you can't hang this on your windows at Christmas time. Is that you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, yes, there are rules when you live in an HOA community. So either you live in one or you don't.
Right. All right. I don't. But you're the president. You're going to be the Scrooge at Christmas time. Your lights are too bright, or whatever.
Yeah. No, we don't get into lighting because it's all common area lighting. It's a condo complex. It's not single family homes.
Right.
So.
Right. But people can outline their windows with Christmas lights or something.
Oh yeah, we allow that. That's fine.
Okay.
We allow Christmas lights.
Oh, yeah. All right. I'm getting a sense of why I know.
You can't paint your door any color you want to paint your door. There's a specific color you have to paint your door.
Specific color for everybody. All right, Madam President. Yeah, I'm not personally. I'm not too keen on the HOAs, but I understand you bought knowing that you were part of an HOA, so I guess you might as well be active in it so you can insert some degree of reasonableness. I hope.
Yes.
I hope.
Yes, I hope so too. Well, I'm also the chair of the social committee, so I'm all about the fun.
Okay. Well, but if you harass people too badly on their door color, you may have 0 people at your social events. So one activity may offset the other. We'll see.
We'll see.
See how those two things are playing together.
And in the nonprofit space, also, Tony, I think I've mentioned to you before. There's something called the Crystal Coast Nonprofit Network that exists, and I've been facilitating the meetings through Zoom over the last year. And so starting in September, we're going to start meeting again in person. So you should really come out and get to know some of those nonprofits here in Carteret County. It'd be fun to have you attend.
I'd love to. Yeah, you mentioned that before. I think I followed up and then I'm not sure what happened after that.
Well, anyway, September, we're taking a break, not meeting in July and August. We just met this week, not meeting July and August, meeting again September. And so that's a nice network of nonprofits. And I launched a website for them, created a site and launched it for them so that they had a space online. So yeah, I'll send you the link.
Okay, Crystal Coast. All right, Crystal Coast Nonprofits. All right.
Yeah.
All right, Maria. Well, I'm grateful for all the hours we spent together over 8 years, you helping nonprofits understand prospect research, how important it is. It's so much richer than a lot of people realize. It goes way beyond Google search, way. And people who've been following you know that.
Yeah.
So I guess I can just say thank you for everything you contributed for all our listeners over so many years. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And thanks so much for having me. It's been great fun.
It's always been a pleasure. Today's a little tough, but up until today, it's always been a pleasure. All right.
Absolutely.
All right. She's Maria Semple. She's still the prospect finder, but just part-time and more business oriented. Her site, theprospectfinder.com and at Maria Semple. Thank you, Maria, and so long.
So long now. Take care.
Next week, let's try to get Amy Sample Ward or Jean Takagi back. I'm working on that. If not, they'll be up soon, and next week will be more from 21 NTC. If you missed any part of this week's show, I beseech you, find it at tonymartignetti.com. We're sponsored by Turn 2 Communications. You remember them. You've heard of them a couple times. PR and content for nonprofits. Your story is their mission. Turn-2.co. And by Send In Blue, the only all-in-one digital marketing platform empowering nonprofits to grow. Tony.ma/sendinblue. Our creative producer is Claire Meyerhoff. The show's social media is by Susan Chavez. Mark Silverman is our web guy, and this music is by Scott Stein. Thank you for that affirmation, Scotty. Be with me next week for Nonprofit Radio. Big nonprofit ideas for the other 95%. Go out and be great.